information here. I'm just keeping it relatively simple. Yeah. Here's what the data sample might look like. Has there been fraud, yes or no? If yes, that's the frequency. Here are the independent variables that I've assumed for this discussion. Is the media electronic? Is the issuing industry financial? Yes or no? Is the source considered experience with identity management? Is there a biometric? Yes or no? Okay. And what I actually did, just so you know, is I as I say, randomly just created 100 or 99 actually, I think, of these line items.
Clarify this table. What is each row?
Each row represents a document type. Okay, so the document, so for a particular document type, let's say a U.S. passport is one of them. Has there been fraud, yes or no, on the first line? I may have looked at the data I've gathered may be related to 50 different U.S. passports. So the question is, has there been fraud among any of those 50 different U.S. passports, yes or no?
And that's why I got confused because what you're saying is that fraud yes or no, but fraud you're showing as a probability. So it's really not yes or no. Is it more a, how many percentage of the fraud has happened or something like that?
Frequency. It's a frequency, yes.
So it's not really, your first column is not yes or no.
Well, the regression that I'm going to do for a logistic regression will be yes or no. But I don't want to lose the information that I have about frequency. There, in, when it gets to the details of the interpretation, there are additional statistical tests that I would want to do using the frequency. But for just the initial regression analysis, the logistic regression analysis, I'm simply trying to predict the probability that there has been fraud, yes or no, for a particular document type.
When you bring the probability, you're bringing the frequency.
Yeah, I'm trying to predict what that frequency will be based on my independent variables.
Okay. Sorry, but I want to clarify that because
sure.
Before going, you're saying pi is equal to probability of fraudulent document type. How to determine the pi? Pi is you determine the pi. Pi is equal to number of documents, number of cases where for that particular document a fraud has occurred.
For that particular document type,
a fraud has occurred divided by number of cases where this document has been used.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. So and that pi becomes the this fraud column. This first column.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
What's your time on this? Is it over 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, that's something that I'll have to set. It may be I may look at new accounts opened over a 6-month period, for instance, or a 3-month period.
Is it consistent for each of the variables? So in other words, are you going to specifically limit it to a set amount of time for each of them?
Yes, I'd be looking at all new accounts opened by, let's say maybe 20 different institutions, but I'd be looking for all new accounts opened over the same 3-month period. Yes.
The document itself could be, I guess, at different times.
Right, that's what I was thinking, because it would change.
I mean, you could do an account opening with a pretty old document.
Oh yes, you could, but remember I'm looking at I'm not looking at the individual document being given, I'm just looking at the document type. So yes, in a particular, among US passports, some of them may be 30 years old, some of them may be 1 year old. But as a type, I don't really have information at the type level, right? That's one of the data items that's not available at the type level.
But if over the time the document type may also change. Say for example, in US passport, 10 years before the US passport didn't have the biometric information. Now the US passport has the biometric information. So how do you manage that? That becomes a question.
Yeah, that becomes a question. That may need to be considered. If that was the question you were asking, I guess I didn't understand.
I just didn't understand how time fit into this. That's all,
Okay.
because I didn't see it in the model, so that's the reason why I was
Okay.
asking.
Okay, I think I answered your question about the same time period that I'm looking at. But for the question that Kaushik is asking, yes, as I think about it, those would probably need to be represented as different document types.
Mhm.
Yes. That's
To
okay.
make sure that we're all together, I want you to reconcile this table with the model you showed in slide 10.
Sure.
Explain, be very clear, what is the deliverable that you're coming out after this table is done? This is sort of a mini version of your data set.
Correct.
What are you going to get out of it?
Okay. So, well, actually, that's
Don't tell us about pies. Tell us
No.
intuitively what this resulting formula is going to be.
sure. Okay. Intuitively, what this is going to tell you is it's going to give you actually, if I can relate it.
What will the resulting formula do for us?
Right. The resulting formula will give you this composite credibility index for the document type.
For which document?
For it gives you a credibility index for a document type that's described as having a particular set of
One of the document types you've already seen, or
Yes.
a new one?
No, this is going to be based on on known document types that we've looked at, that we're actually looking at. The step 3B here that I have on this slide, I argue that having established the credibility index for known document types, if you now get a document type that you haven't seen before, but you can define what the value of the independent variables is, then you can use that to predict the credibility index for a new document type. That's what I was talking about here when I talked about the new document type.
So connect this now to the payoff,
And to the payoff,
slide 5.
The payoff is, I said here, is providing guidance for organizations on how to set document policy based on an assessment of the credibility of the document type. That assessment of the credibility for the document type allows you to set the policy for each document type. That's the payoff that I was talking about here.
Everybody together on this?
Well, connecting the dots, right?
Yes, it is all connected with that, absolutely.
Okay, back to the matrix. Is that what
Yes, sure, okay.
A question I have for the more empirical colleagues around the table is the N on each of these rows can be vastly different. He mentioned U.S. passport. He said 50. Well, it could be 50 million. And so the incidence there, the frequency, could be 0.0005 or 0.00003, whereas the N in another one could be 20. Does that matter? I don't know. I'm just tossing that out because it's something that sort of, these are like a whole, you know, there's going to be, each row is a different data set.
Yeah, the regression model will just give you the number in common. Anything that's, you know, any case that is missing, you know, certain kinds of documents or whatever, those will all come out. So it'll come down to your lowest common denominator.
Which is a document type.
Yeah.
Kind of goes back to how you're collecting the data, because you know, if you just, I know that for some of the things you're interviewing people to find out, for the record research. But I was wondering how you actually get this data on fraud on document types. Is that also through interviews?
Yes, it will be through a process of interviewing.
So in which case?
But getting this will be because all of this data is not likely to be available in a computer record someplace. So I shouldn't say interviewing, but it's going to involve getting information from probably paper documents, or it might be computer records that are kept of